It's a trap. It's a full-on trap. You're moving backward and you think that you're stalled in considering your options. If you are thinking you want this, you've done nothing to get it. Until you stand now, you are drifting away from the very thing that you say you want. I don't want to discourage anybody in that. It's actually great news. If you know what you need to go do, stop thinking about it. Do it. I don't want to sound like a jerk when I say this, but the question, how do you get started? Well, how about get started? Move. Take action. Say yes. Put yourself on the hook. And I'm even okay, put yourself on the hook and quit. Quit later. But you've already quit if you didn't put yourself on the hook. Action means action. Now means now. Stand now. As humans, we prefer the path of least resistance. We crave convenience, the payoff without the price. But when our lives revolve around comfort, it doesn't deliver. Living in perpetual comfort leaves us weak and asleep. This podcast is an invitation to flip that script, to choose the unlikely path, to get the life you really want through voluntary discomfort. This is Strong and Awake. I'm Dane Sanders.
So Dane, have you ever bought an online course?
Oh, have I bought an online course? And that's
Are you like me?
Just the beginning of the things that I've bought in a very similar vein.
The stack of books on your nightstand, all of that. I love buying online courses because it makes me feel like I've accomplished something. I know this thing now. I've bought it. I've taken the action. Or you might have someone that signs up for a Couch to 5K or something, and then you get that exhilaration of clicking that button, getting the bib in the mail, but we haven't actually done anything. And what I want to talk about today is that phenomenon, that experience that we have and that satisfaction that we get, but oftentimes we sit in that satisfaction. We think this is the finish line. We've accomplished something. And today's anchor is one that kind of addresses that and talks about how we actually, where does the action start and where does our actually practice begin? So let's talk about stand now.
When I was a young man, I remember being affirmed by a lot of people, and they would talk about my potential as a leader. And man, did that feel good. Man, did that feel good. And what betrayed their declaration about me was what would happen next, which was I felt like I was the one. I had been chosen. They said the thing. I have the potential. Like somehow that was sufficient. In contrast with the smart people who almost disregard statements like that because potential isn't real. It's not here. It's almost like, to say it's a curse isn't quite right because we all have potential, but there is a sense in which unactualized potential is awful. It's a sense of like you have access to thing, but you didn't take access. You didn't take it upon yourself. And I think that's a little of what you're describing and why so many clever course offerings, and I'm not picking on online courses. It's like anything marketed where if you get this thing, it's going to be amazing. It's so incredible. I'm reminded, I might have told the story a long time ago here, but I was a part of a community yard sale one time, and a friend of mine came up, this guy in particular, his name's Eric Tonnes, very kind of accomplished theologian, and we just happened to work at the same university. And he's also he used to be a professional football player back in the day. And he was telling this story about an old event an old yard sale that he was a part of, where this really, really overweight, out of shape individual was selling a piece of gear, like a machine that if you use it, let's call it a Peloton, or like, it doesn't really matter what the machine was. It was for sale. And here this super athlete friend was telling me the story, this really fit dude. And he was saying how he went up to this guy who was I can't overstate this, really out of shape. And his first question to the guy was, we're at a yard sale, it's really cheap. Like, does the machine work that he's selling? And the guy selling it just kind of looked at him and he went, like look at the result. Like, here it is. Of course. How dare you suggest it's not working? Like, with this kind of body, are you kidding? And everyone had a good laugh with the whole idea. But that's precisely it. It's that exact dynamic of, we have access to the thing, but if we don't use the thing, there's no thing. It's a mirage. It's not real. And I think that's one of the reasons why today's anchor, I think, is such an important conversation. It's to get us out of our cognitive kind of experience, our disembodied conversation with ourselves of, I bought the course, I bought the machine, I bought the whatever. I didn't even buy it. I have proximity to it, or I have the potential to, or even just the lie of, I think I have time. Like, I have like, I'll do that next year, or it's like as if you're going to have next year. You don't. You just don't. And I know that from personal experience. Familial, my co-founder at MWOD, like, we don't know what we have. What we have is what we do. And I would argue that there is stages, and we'll talk about both of them today, that are critical. Like, we talk a lot about our habits that turn into a routine that ultimately turn into a practice. When it comes to our practice, a practice has two purposes, or what would you call a plural of purposes, I guess, but two purposes. And one is to wake up to our potential. One is to wake up to reality, whatever. It's one of the reasons why we have a practice every single day. It's becoming a kind of person that doesn't miss a day. That's what the practice is helping us become. Well, part of it is waking up to who we could become. But that's insufficient. It's necessary, but insufficient. And if I take a cold shower, I literally wake up. If I hold my breath, I literally wake up. And it serves a function, but it's only the first half of the equation. The second half of the equation is to, with as little consciousness as possible, get after the work, to get into the thing, to stand now. So, this is the culmination of all of our anchors that we've been talking about. Get to choose your role, fuel first, travel light, prioritize profit, correct course, play infinite, and today is stand now. But standing now is really this two-part play where we wake up and then we take action towards getting stronger, or in the language of men and women of discomfort, we do all of this to become strong and awake, or awake and strong for love's sake. And that shrinking of that transition from awareness of what I ought to do to what's next is what's so critical. Last comment I'll make. I just came from a sweet coffee with this colleague of my son's who reached out to me, an extraordinary individual who has overcome tremendous obstacles. Broken home would be a ridiculous understatement of what he's come from, and the trajectory statistically he ought to have been on, and somehow it got interrupted. But he has ambition for more. He wants to go somewhere else. And we were talking, and he was like, can you give me advice on how I can go get this big thing that I want to go get? And I had kind of very unsexy news for him, that if he really was committed to getting that big dream that he wanted to accomplish, it came down to what he did today. Like, would he stand now today? Would he not get lost in the vision, the dream, the big thing, without tethering it, anchoring it to standing now today? Because he just turned, he's a little older than my son. He's just turned 40, I think, new dad, relatively speaking. And he's like, I'm almost 40. He's like, he feels like he's late to the party. And I'm like, well, if you get started today, you might start seeing the fruit of what you're dreaming about when you turn 50. And if you can get okay with that and really lock in to the daily, it might happen sooner. But even when it happens, you won't care as much about it happening, because you will have been the real article every single day leading up to that, regardless. Standing now is a daily exercise. It's a momentary exercise. It's a now exercise, very present. And for folks who are listening, my hope is that they're a little irritated by that. They'd rather get lost in the future vision of who they could be, the potential. And what I'm suggesting is get clear-eyed on the potential, know where you're headed. That's great. But then ignore it. Get to what are the means by which you become that kind of person, and stand now.
Isn't it funny that it's so ironic that we have so much patience for like starting the thing? We're totally fine being like, yeah, tomorrow, next week, next quarter, next year, in January, I'll start doing this thing. Yet we have such impatience for the results that starting that thing would bring us. I love the simplicity of this anchor. Like, it's so descriptive, stand now. And you talked about kind of unpacking both of those things. But it speaks to that kind of immediacy of the action that we're taking right now, the embodied act of standing. And I'd love to kind of unpack each of those things right now. So do you have a preference of, do you want to focus on standing, embodied, or the kind of proactive, immediate action?
Yeah, I mean, on some level, they're the same thing. They, if I'm standing, it is happening in the now. And if I'm going to get after it, it's going to involve my body doing it. So I don't think, it's almost like they're standing is the action and now is the timing. And so it's not standing tomorrow. It's not standing yesterday. It's standing today, but they're kind of incomplete in part. They're only complete in whole. There is built into it a bias towards presence and being current. You don't get to rest on the laurels of what happened to you a decade ago or what you could be a decade from now. It's action oriented and embodied. It's if you're doing something with your physical body in the present moment, you're standing now. Not complicated, not esoteric. If you're thinking about standing now, you're not standing now. This is where we trick ourselves constantly, right? It's back to your example of like, I bought the course, so therefore I'm on my way. No, you bought a course. That's all you did. Are you in the lesson? Are you moving forward? Are you taking action with your physical body right now? Yeah. Now you're standing now. And then when you stop, you're not standing now. So just notice it. It's like, oh, I'm off course. I correct course. And this is where I'm encouraged that how all of the anchors begin to layer on top of each other. They serve each other. So when I realize I'm not standing now, what ought I to do? Well, you get to choose your role. Maybe fuel first. Maybe travel light. And on we go. But if you're not in the thing, not thinking about the thing, not emoting toward the thing, not intending toward the thing, but standing, doing presently now, then don't deceive yourself. And also, you don't have to feel shame about it. I think the opportunity is to go, oh, you've woken up. Great. Good job. Now stand now. And then stand now again. And then stand now again. And this is the good news. That we even get to stand now. There's this moment that we're in right now in our community at Men and Women of Discomfort. We're in week 12, and as you know, we're both doing it. And there's such a huge temptation for people who have stood for 12 weeks to think like they've accomplished something, and they have in a sense. But it's already historic. It doesn't actually count for anything. It buys into this idea of kind of this binary linear path where, oh, I've accomplished a thing. I've made it. You know, we see pro sports teams win championships like that can never be taken from them. They won. But the moment the season's over, they're in the same power as everybody else. They're playing a finite game where the chances, their job is to get after it again. And our interest is to wake people from their delusion in our community and help them understand if they're not standing now tomorrow, or I guess it'll be Sunday after we're finished this round on Saturday, then guess what? They've begun the process of losing all of their gains, of moving in the opposite direction. There's no static position where we stop. It's you're moving forward or backwards. And the reason we do our practice every single day, never miss a day practice, is so that we can always be moving in this direction. And we do that. And when you do that for like a quarter, a year, a decade, you really start seeing exponential fruit from that effort. But what it feels like is, I got to stand up again. Standing again. Okay, here we go again. And getting comfortable with that reality is really core to anchoring ourselves into the benefits of what you can get.
Yeah. Thanks for emphasizing and how all the anchors tie in, because they do inform this and kind of animate us towards standing now. I think a lot of people could probably listen through this whole podcast. They've read the books, they've bought the courses, yet they're still convinced that they don't quite have all the info that they need. They don't have what it takes to stand now, even to get started. Maybe they're future tripping in one way of like, oh, it's going to be glorious, I'm going to get there. Or maybe they're future tripping in the other sense of like, that's so big, that's so far off, I'm not prepared. I got to do more reading, I got to do more studying, I got to ramp up to this. What are some of those other misconceptions that we might have that prevent us from taking that immediate action, from sitting in that pause too long?
I love that you're asking this question. And I'd go further than calling it a misconception. I think it's not vivid enough of a description. It's a trap. It's a full-on trap. You're not just deceived, you're deceived, and as a result of that deception, you are tricking yourself into making it more difficult to take action. You're moving backward, and you think that you're stalled in considering your options. That's the problem. That's the problem. And every second that you're not awake and going against the drift, anticipating the whirlwinds and getting ready for them, knowing that at every turn, comfort is dangling in front of you and inviting you in. They are traps. And all of my friends make fun of me for I'm like Chicken Little. There it is. Oh, the sky's falling. But I'm not wrong on this one. This one it's backed up by thousands of years of practitioners understanding the reality of how this thing works. How are humans wired? How do we function and flourish in this world? Well, it's not from getting in the drift and taking the current wherever it goes. Nobody drifts their way to greatness. No one in history. Even the most talented people who show up on the scene with no discipline and just are so gifted, give them a minute and they'll destroy their life. They will. And we've seen it happen over and over and over again. Why we would be surprised is beyond me. But the trick, I think, is to narrow it down to, regardless of what we see out there, it's like, let's get real with what's in here. The great line that's been popularized by Seth Godin, this idea of let's get real or let's not play. Let's get real for a second. If you are thinking you want this, you've done nothing to get it. Until you stand now, you are drifting away from the very thing that you say you want. And the moment you stand now, you're taking a step in the direction of becoming that kind of person that gets that thing. And this is the grand deception, is to think that we can think about it and somehow not drift while we're thinking. So I don't want to discourage anybody in that. I think it's actually great news. If you know what you need to go do, stop thinking about it. Do it. Like, put yourself on the hook. In our world, just stop thinking about applying to MWOD and apply. Like, get in the game. And if you're thinking like, no, I'm injured. No, I'm sick. No, Thanksgiving and Christmas are coming and I need to have cocktails along the way. Or no, I need creamer in my coffee every single day or whatever. It's like, just know you are actively participating in a deception in your mind that's taking you away from the thing that you think you want. And if you've been listening to the podcast this long, friends, there's something in what we're talking about that you want. And I'd encourage you to go take it. Stand now. Go get the thing that you say you want and stop hesitating. And we will keep saying to you, it's probably not for you, because until you do the thing, we don't believe you. Just because you're a subscriber or a listener or whatever, none of us here at MWOD believe you are actually interested in this thing until you actually take action in the thing. That's when we know, based off of results, that this is what you're up for, that this is for you. And we want that for you. We do. But we also recognize if you have another way to go get it, go get it. That's fine. This is just how we do it. And we would just love the company if you want to join us along for the ride. But we're clear in our community, standing now is a non-negotiable. Standing now is what it proves that I am the person that I say I want to be.
Yeah, I have a tendency towards overcomplicating things. You know this about me. It's a gift and a curse.
Sure.
To see the nuance in things, but also can get all stuck in that. But I do love the simplicity of this and the recognition that all we have is now. Like you said, there is no, like, the idea of pause is kind of a myth. Like, there is no pause. You're moving. It's just, what direction are you moving? Whether it's
that's exactly right. Are you
toward that destination or that destination,
exactly
or
right.
forward or back, however you want to think about it. But I do think there are practical things that we can do in the moment, and again, not to overcomplicate it. But like, how can we begin to craft a practice that is biased towards action, that's biased towards this standing in the moment? You talked about kind of the two aspects of it. Like the first step is waking up, like being aware of this thing. And then, like, how do we start moving towards this strength?
Well, the oft talk about strategy to win Family Feud is really resourceful here. So if you want to win Family Feud, there's only one way to win the game. If you don't know the game show, you should look it up. But there's only one way to win that game. You hit the button before you know the answer. And this is not unlike how we record this podcast. So for those of you who don't know, before we hit record, we talk about what we're going to talk about. And then we hit record. And often, like today, Mitch's job was to open the show. And Mitch wasn't totally sure what he was going to say. So we just hit record. And guess what? Mitch figured out what to say when the recording started. Happens over and over and over again. So I don't want to sound like a jerk when I say this, but the question, how do you get started? Well, how about get started? Like, move. Take action. Say yes. Put yourself on the hook. And I'm even okay, put yourself on the hook and quit. Quit later. But you've already quit if you didn't put yourself on the hook. If you're not moving in that direction. Like, even people who are like, oh, I can't run a marathon because I'm going to fail. I'm like, well, then fail. Which mile do you plan on failing at? Mile 1, mile 10, mile 22? Like, I don't fail. Learn from it. Come back at it again. Even people who can't imagine going without creamer in their coffee or getting in a cold shower or whatever. Well, and you're sure that's where you're going to quit. Well, prove it. Get in that cold shower and then get out real quick and tell me that you quit because of it. That's fine. I don't care. Drink that awful plain old coffee and spit it out going, I will never drink coffee without creamer again. It's like, well, then maybe don't drink coffee again. Like, it's so obvious, right? When we pause and consider it for even a second. Action means action. Now means now. Stand now.
I see. I knew you would bring that kind of clarity to this conversation, Dane. I was just playing a role, just playing the role of this person that overcomplicates things. That's not really me.
Well, how does this tangibly, like, how does this play out for you, Mitch? Like, when you think about your own experience with this.
Well, I see myself using that deception, that strategy all the time. We talked about this a little bit in our decision-making episode, but like, it's helpful to know and name that, because when I'm sitting there deciding what workout I'm going to do, or what, lat exercise I'm going to do on my app, like that's all that kind of like, I don't really want to do this thing. I don't want to actually take action, but it feels productive to be doing these things. So it's helpful to recognize and name these things, because you realize, oh, I'm moving in a direction, and it's not in the direction of action and actual growth.
Yeah.
The second thing that...
Well, before you go to the second
ahead.
thing, let's name a couple things in everyone's day that connect to this. So you wake up, you're laying in bed. Literally stand now. Just get on your feet. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what's the next thing you're going to choose that you're going to be glad you chose? For me, it's a cold shower. And I can put a lot of things in front of that moment if I want to, because I don't like cold showers. But my job is to stand under the nozzle and turn the thing. There's no other job to do. Maybe floss my teeth, go to the bathroom, and if that's a higher priority for me. But my job is to get to that place. And even if I am flossing my teeth, that's the difference. I'm standing now in that context. See, so as you think through the entirety of your day, doing the hard project, putting off distractions like social media or whatever is your thing of choice, digging into the deep work of a project that is going to take multiple days and processes of feeling uncomfortable as you wade into the deeper waters, having that conversation with a colleague or a boss or someone that's working for you that's going to be uncomfortable. Get into it. Press play. Hit the button. Get into it. And I think you're going to be smart. Now, there's nothing wrong with standing now and grounding and getting clear about what you want to do in these contexts. You don't have to be premature about it, but be unambiguously clear that you're moving in the direction of the thing. That if you're in motion in this present moment, you're standing now. Just make sure you're standing now in the direction that matters. But I cut you off. I just wanted to make sure people have really clear visions of what we're talking about.
No, and that's great. I think that's super important. And kind of going back to correct course, like you can't steer a boat that's not moving. You can't, if you ever try to like steer a bike without moving, like you're not going to turn in any direction. You're just stagnant. So I think that is
pushing
important.
A rope. Totally.
Yeah. Pushing a rope. Exactly. Have a bias towards action, and then figure it out, course correct along the way. The other thing that I was getting into, and a strategy that sometimes I use, like I mentioned before, is noticing like I don't have what it takes, or I'm not equipped. I need a little bit more information. And one thing that we talk a lot about in the community, and what you have shared lots of times, is like what's the next right action, or if you're not sure what the right decision is, like what would your future self do in this moment, or that ideal self. And that, it sounds so simple, but just like the act of stepping outside and like kind of coaching yourself from an outside perspective, that little mental model can be so resourceful to help kind of get all the clutter out of the way, simplify, and paint a picture of actual like reality as it is, versus this crazy web of excuses that you've made in your mind. So that's what I was getting at when you talked about naming those things.
Yeah.
Is there anything for you that comes to mind in this category?
Well, I think probably the last thing I'll just point to is when it comes to standing now, I think that there is some degree of like a cognitive load that people have on like standing now where, which one, what thing should I pick first? And this is where I do think that there's probably some resource in standing now in even just moving a pencil on a piece of paper, reflecting around how you want to order your days. How do you want to start your day? How do you want to sustain your day? And not how you want isn't quite right. Your preference matters very little. How would your future self have wanted you to have started your day? How would your future self would have wanted you to sustain your day and to set up the next day by ending your day well so that you can do it again? These are these kind of fundamental building blocks of being in the right thing for the right moment. A friend of mine put me onto a podcast that I listen to periodically. I think it's called The Right Thing Now, the right next thing, maybe the right next thing. And I love that phrase because you want to be attending to the right next thing. But here's what I'll say is, even if you're not sure, attend to the thing that occurs to you to be relevant right now. And if you realize that's the wrong thing, stop and stand now in a different direction. But not being in motion is problematic. Going back to what we said at the beginning of this, the reason we have a practice is to do two pieces. One's to wake us up, one's to get stronger. Well, usually the uncomfortable thing is what wakes us up as we get, and we lean into and hug, kind of embrace this, the thing that the exact same thing that we're after gets us stronger. And that's applied over the course of a 24-hour window for a particular result. And that result is becoming who you were made to become. So will you get it right out of the gate? Of course not. Of course not. Whatever practice you come up with this year, and 5 years from now, you'll look back and go, well, that was kind of funny. But you wouldn't get to the 5-year mark if you didn't do the practice that seems evident to you today. So do that thing. Stand now and leverage all the anchors. And my hope is that as we've kind of approached this from a number of different angles over the course of this season's episodes, that it's landing for people as a really hopeful approach, that you can really adjust your perspective. You have agency over yourself, where you can adjust your perspective and have that perspective actually cause motion, get you in the game, not watching from the sidelines. I love the way, Brene Brown, and before her, Teddy Roosevelt would talk about, like, in the arena, like, get in the game. Stop thinking about getting in the game. Get in the game. And I think on some level, Stand Now is emblematic of that idea.
As we consider Stand Now, one of the ways to stand now and stop thinking, well, what shoes should I wear? One of the things that could be resourceful is getting a guide, getting someone that can kind of uncomplicate this thing for you, to kind of show you this path. And I think that's a big part of what we do at MWOD, and a big part of that future round is saying, you don't have to think about it. Here's the things that you can do to stand now.
Yeah.
And of course, as people do subsequent rounds, they kind of reassess after that quarter of committing to that. Okay, what's moving me in the right direction? What isn't? How can I adjust this? And then commit to that for the next quarter. So I do think there's a lot of resource in going back to kind of choose your role, getting a guide to kind of help get you in this movement forward.
Yeah, the two biggest reasons why people do MWOD is, one, they don't have to do it alone. Community is powerful. And then two, especially your first round, the reduction of cognitive load. How many people lament with this notion of, like, if someone would just tell me what to do, I'd do it. Well, I'm calling your bluff. Because if you've ever heard yourself say that, we are telling you right now, one choice to participate, all of your choices made. We will tell you everything you need to do. And it's comprehensive. And right now, even as I say those words, some of you guys are like, what? What do you mean? And I mean what I said. What you eat, when you eat, what you drink, what you don't drink, when that happens, how long you sleep, when you exercise, for how long, what you're doing, anonymous good deeds, how long you're in a cold shower, conversations you're going to have with people that are different than you, meditation, reading. I mean, we will cover the bases. And there's hundreds of people who've gone before you who have gotten through it and somehow survived and actually gotten strong and awake for love's sake. So if that's what you want, strong and awake for love's sake, we will remove all the cognitive load and do it together. And all you get to do is say yes. And as you wave the white flag of surrender and set down your preferences, because committing to something and then when you don't want to do it and doing it anyways is hard, but having community around you is very helpful. You'll get after it. You will see it. We're seeing it right now. Week 12, we're seeing people finishing their future round, and they cannot believe who they have become in 12 weeks, how much weight they've lost, how much stronger they've become physically, emotionally, the conversations they've been courageous to have with people that they've been scared to have conversations with, the way their marriages improve, their doctor visits, when the doctors are like, whatever you're doing, do more of that because you're adding years to your life. It's unmistakable. Like so one thing I can actually say with real guarantee, you see this through, your life will be transformed. Now, not forever. It'll be transformed until the day you quit. But if you keep standing now in this effort, we are confident you will continue to get stronger and more awake, for love's sake. And that's pretty exciting. So yes, especially in your future round, that notion of not having to decide and doing it together with others will be a profound difference maker for a lot of folks who are feeling like they want to barf at the idea, but know that now is for them. Now is the chance for you to stand now and go apply, get after it.
Mm-hmm. And just to clarify, their life will be transformed until they quit standing now, not quit MWOD, because there's a lot of resource in standing, even outside of this particular community. But
that's exactly right.
But if you're like you said, if you hear yourself or you feel when Dane said, "I'm calling your bluff," if you felt that little like twinge of, then that's probably a good sign that this might be worth checking out. So to find out more, just go to mwod.io/apply. And our next round, by the time this episode comes out, our next round will be underway. But you can always sign up. We've got a number of resources and things that you can start standing before the next round starts. But I encourage you, just take that first step and see what happens. See what happens. We've got one more bonus episode for this series.
Yes.
And I didn't know if you wanted to tease it or set it up, or if we just wanted to leave it at that.
No, I cannot wait. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I learned this from my mentor, Dan Dakini. 6 little words that will change your life forever. That's what we'll cover next episode. 6 words.
We'll see you there.
All right. Thanks, Mitch.
Thanks.
Men and Women of Discomfort is our membership community, and we are open to everyone. But keep in mind, our tagline is, "It's probably not for you." If we're wrong about that, or if you want to find out for yourself, you can find us at MWOD.io.